Okay, next question. If sine 35 degrees is equal to k, determine the following in terms of k. We've done multiple of these. The first thing that you do if you get this question is always know that this is going to be on the Cartesian plane. So you're going to start. Sine 35 degrees is equal to k. But we want a ratio when we work with trig. So this is k over 1. What is the ratio of sine? Sine is y over r. So this is so important. Now you can draw your Cartesian plane. And since they do not give you any other information, it's between this quadrant and this quadrant, or between this degrees and that degrees, or any interval like that, they do not give you any other information. We are going to go in the first quadrant. So this kind of, and remember you always draw to your x-axis, né? To give you a triangle there. So this is y equals 2, x equals 2, and r equals 2. Now guess what? You already have your y value and your r value. Your y value is k, your r value is 1. How are we going to find x? That's easy, Pythagoras. You guys are supposed to already be able to do this without doing the calculation, but x squared is equal to r squared minus y squared. And this is then 1 squared minus k squared. But remember, this is the value for x squared. X to the right is positive and to the left it is negative. But we drew it to the right. So we want x equal to the square root of 1 minus k squared. That is my value now for x. Now we can get to the questions. Firstly, they ask you 4.3.1, which was in your exam, cosine of 55 degrees. That is your first question. A few different ways that you can do it, but let's go and say, but cosine 55 degrees is equal to cosine of 90 degrees minus 35 degrees. Because it's 90 degrees, we have to change this to sine 90 degrees minus, it's positive, nay, sine 35 degrees. And guess what? You already have a value for sine 35 degrees, and it is k. So there's your answer. The second question that they gave you was for sine 145 degrees. Can you still see that? Sine of 145 degrees. Two different ways that you guys can do this. I am going to prefer to do sine of 180 degrees minus 35 degrees, because 180 degrees minus 35 degrees will give you 145 degrees, and that is then 180 degrees minus 35 degrees is in the second quadrant, which means sine is positive. So this gives you sine 35 degrees. And you have a value for sine 35 degrees, it's equal to k. Next question that they gave you was sine 70 degrees. Okay, now think quickly. What was the degree that they gave you there? 35 degrees. And what is 70 degrees in comparison to 35 degrees? Okay, so we're going to say 70 degrees is sine 2 times by 35 degrees. And guess what again? Sine 2 times by 35 degrees gives you a double angle, which means this is 2 times by sine 35 degrees cosine 35 degrees. You have a value for sine 35 degrees. It's k. So this is 2 times by k. Now, cosine 35 degrees, you do not have a value for yet. And that is why you needed to draw the Cartesian plane. So when we go to the Cartesian plane, remember cosine is x over r. It's over 1, so I'm not even going to add the r there. So this is technically just your x value here. So times by the square root of 1 minus k squared. And there's your answer. Okay. And then the last question that they gave you here was cosine 80 degrees. Okay, so this one was a bit difficult, I will give you that. Cosine 80 degrees. 80 degrees is not 2 times by 35 degrees. It's not 90 degrees minus 90 degrees minus 10 degrees. Yes, but there's no 10 degrees within my Cartesian plane. We don't have anything like that. So you had to think a little bit further. 80 degrees is equal to 35 degrees, which you have. So start from that, okay? We have 80 degrees given there for us. Minus, we are given 35 degrees. So let's see what's left then. 45 degrees. But do we not have a special triangle for 45 degrees? Yes, we do. In other words, this is cosine of 35 degrees plus 45 degrees. Okay, now we can go. We have a rule for cosine. So remember, with cosine, we change the sign. But with cosine, it's cosine, cosine, sine, sine. Do you guys remember that rule that we did in class? So this is then cosine 35 degrees, cosine 45 degrees. Change minus sine 35 degrees, sine 45 degrees. Okay, now we can continue from that. Cosine 35 degrees we get from our triangle or Cartesian plane, and this is then the square root of 1 minus k squared. Cosine 45 degrees, 1 square root 2, 45 degrees, 45 degrees. It's your special triangle name. Cosine 45 degrees is 1 over square root 2 minus sine 35 degrees is given to us, so that's k, times by sine 45 degrees is also 1 over square root of 2. So great, now you've gotten this far, and yes, you can leave this as your answer. That's perfectly fine. You do not have to simplify this. Yeah, no need to simplify. This is your final answer. You can leave it like this.